Alrighty guys, my replacement part for the 500 horse insane shaft axles came in. I'm gonna go ahead and get that thrown together. Still have not got the diff back from M Factory, so I'm working a ton coming up in the next couple weeks, so might be a little bit, but I'll do a quick time lapse of reassembling this axle, and I need a couple more clamps because it turns out, and this was my 6-week fix. Zip ties don't seal these very well. Not super surprised by that, so I need to replace that too. But after that, it'll be good to go. Alrighty guys, so I finished getting the axle reassembled. I still got to replace this zip tie. News on the diff, still waiting on it. I'm not even sure that it has arrived at M Factory yet, so it might be a little bit. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I have the dial indicator and the stand to be able to measure the main shaft thrust, but I don't have the tool. So I'm going to try to make one, so it'll clamp around the main shaft, the input shaft, and then you're able to thread a bolt down and it'll pull on the main shaft, and you use that dial indicator to see what the thrust is. So I just got back. I picked up this, I went to my local metal supermarket and picked up this aluminum drop for, it was less than $40. Not going to use most of it. So, but yeah, I'm going to turn hopefully this piece of aluminum into the right tool to be able to measure the main shaft clearance. Just wanted to show you guys the tool I was working on. Got it made. I literally took a block of aluminum, hole sawed the center, cut like on the upper 3/4 of the hole saw, and then drilled and tapped a bolt for here, drilled and tapped a bolt for there and there. And that way you can tighten this aluminum block onto the input shaft and then run this bolt down, and it'll push against this and it'll pull on the input shaft. And as it pulls on the input shaft, it'll tell you how much end play there is. So I had 5 thousandths of end play, which is in spec, so we're good there. The only other thing I had to do, because this case is aluminum, and this is magnetic base for a dial indicator, I just had to find a piece of scrap steel and bolt it to the case, so this had a place to stand so it doesn't move. But yeah, this was not my idea. Somebody else makes one of these. There's a few people that make one of these, Honda being one of them, but they're all over $100, and I made this for less than 40. So yeah, I got that done. Still waiting on the diff, so not sure what I'm getting into next. All right, guys, what I'm working on now, this is something I wanted to get done before sick week. It wasn't at the top of my priority list because I felt like it was going to be okay. But while I'm waiting on the diff to come in, I figured I'd go ahead and replace this turbo return line. You can see here, obviously it's rubbing. It was pretty tight against the transmission. I'll show you guys. Obviously the transmission's not in the car right now, but obviously it came out of the turbo here and ran down right here, and you guys will see it whenever I get it ran again, and then down to the oil pan. And it was just a little short, so it was pulling into the transmission, and it took a couple years to get this bad. So I'm just going to replace it. And I got one different fitting I'm going to try. Instead of a 45 on both, this one here is a 60-degree fitting that's going to come off the oil pan. I figured that'll give it more gravity coming from the turbo into the oil pan, because you want the line to be as straight as possible. That would be the most ideal. I have to run a 45 off the turbo, but I think I could probably get away with this 60 on the oil pan, and maybe it's going to be a minimal difference, but it'll probably just work a little bit better. Something else too is, so the fittings that I used before are Jegs fittings, and these two fittings are Vibrant fittings, and you can see the Jegs have a longer run right there compared to the Vibrant fitting. And where that's going to be super handy is because that 45 is going to go on the turbo right here, right there, and it'll bring everything closer to the compressor housing of the turbo and keep it away from the shifter cables and everything on top of the transmission. I wouldn't be able to do that if I had a bigger housing turbo, but I don't, so I'm able to get away with that. But that's something to think of too. Whenever you're plumbing stuff like this, you look at it and you're like, okay, a 45 is going to work. Well, if the first 45 you get doesn't work, obviously there's little differences between brands. So maybe the Jegs 45 doesn't work, but the Vibrant will, or vice versa. So I'm going to get this assembled, and I'll get back to you guys. I just want to show you guys how I go about plumbing any of these assembled hose lines. So as you can see on the workbench, I already had one of the hose ends on. So once you determine I'm going to use a 60, 45, whatever, go ahead and assemble that end, and then go ahead and screw it into wherever you're going to screw it in. I've got the 45 off the turbo threaded on, and from there I'll take the line, and obviously it's way long, and I'll put it up by the fitting and I'll make my mark. Okay, so that marks where I'm going to cut to go ahead and assemble this fitting onto the hose. That's just how I do it. There's a million ways to skin a cat, but it's gone pretty good for me. And as you can see, I didn't film before I did the 60. Let me get down here. I didn't film before I did the 60, but this is what it looks like now. And it's a pretty clean, straight shot up to the turbo. So I feel like that will work good. Another thing to consider whenever you're doing turbo drains, and I know a lot of K-Series guys, when they're running the style manifold that I'm running, will run it to the back. That just doesn't make sense to me, because where you're going to see the most oil pressure and oil flow is at wide open throttle. And at wide open throttle, and you're moving forward and you're producing G's, all of that oil that's in the pan is going to slosh to the back, therefore, in my mind, restricting the flow. So, it's a little longer and maybe a little more or a little harder to do, but I run my drain to the front of the pan for that reason. The other thing I'm going to do real quick is, you can see this line from my fuel rail to regulator is a little bit long. I made that before I had the swirl pot here, and whenever my charge pipe was shooting straight down. And I put it behind this clamp to help with it. But as you can see on the back side of the swirl pot, it started to rub right there. And common sense tells you stainless steel rubbing up against aluminum is not good. It'll eventually wear through and create a leak. So I need to shorten this line, and I figured one way I could do it, instead of running a 90, I could do a 45, and that would create less restriction in theory. And I've got the 45 degree PTFE fitting for this, so we'll go ahead and do that too. All right, so I got the fuel line from the rail to the regulator fixed. It's pretty much perfect. Obviously nowhere near the catch can anymore, and it's not even close to that clamp. There's the 45, which I changed from a 90. And I also got the turbo return plumbed. I'll go ahead and hop down here and show you guys what it looks like. You can't see it from there. Right there. So you see, instead of a 45, it's a 60, so it's angled up more. Small detail, but it's also, you can see it's got plenty of room between where the bell housing and the engine block made up. So that's good. So, like I said, we're still waiting on the diff to get back. And once that gets back, obviously I'll reassemble everything. I'm happy I built that little tool so I could measure the main shaft thrust. I've always kind of just assumed that it was good, but it's a small detail. More so with aftermarket stuff that matters, but it does matter whenever you're swapping cases around and this gear set into this case. It does start to matter. So I just finished up the turbo return and the fuel line from the rail to the regulator, which is nice. Small details, but those are things that need to happen before they make bigger issues. I think the diff probably got to M Factory today, so it's still going to be a little bit before I get it back. So the next thing I'm probably going to jump into is figuring out what's going on with my rear wheel speed, because a lot of the stuff that is in my tune is based off of that. So that's pretty key, and that's what allows me to see when I'm spinning. When the front wheels are spinning, I can compare it to the rear wheel speed, which is the undriven wheels. The other thing I'm working on, I mentioned the clutch slipper stuff before. I'm in contact with the dude from Hitmaster. He's going to look at some data that I have and tell me what he thinks. I'm still planning on doing the clutch pressure sensor, no matter what, just because it's good data to have. I'm also thinking about adding oil temp and pan vacuum, just so I can see what my blow by looks like. But yeah, until then. Alrighty guys, back in the garage today with some more updates. I got bad news. I shipped the diff out, as you guys seen in the last video. The tracking was taking a little while. It was taking a while to get there. Come to find out, the package was lost. So that's a bummer. And I really didn't have the money to pay for insurance, so I didn't get insurance on the package. Well, I got paid, so I ordered a new diff, and I'm still waiting to hear back from UPS on what's going to happen with my package that got lost. So still waiting on a diff to come in. I just ordered the new one today. I also had a couple of things come in the mail. The stuff to do my clutch pressure, and I'm switching from just an oil pressure sensor to one of the low dollar Motorsports combo sensors, so I can get oil temp also. And yeah, that's what I'm working on now, is just figuring out how I'm gonna plumb everything and how I'm gonna wire it up, because I've got the firewall bulkhead right here. I'll show you guys. I went with a firewall bulkhead, which I love. It's super clean, super nice for if you gotta maintenance anything. The only downside to it is I'm running out of wires that are coming through that bulkhead. So I've reallocated a few things. I had some spare plugs, luckily, on this side of the firewall coming through that connector. But I'm running out of stuff to use, right? So I think I used, the Fuel Tech uses an internal map sensor. So the map sensor wiring on the engine, or on this side of the firewall, I ended up reallocating that so I could add, was it coolant pressure? It might have been coolant pressure. Or it was so I could extend the coolant pressure, because I moved it from the side of the cylinder head back here into the radiator right there. And that works super easy, because a map sensor is basically, it's the same as any of these pressure sensors. I believe it's 5-volt sensor ground and then your input. So with the low dollar combo sensor, same story as any of these other sensors. So 5-volt sensor ground and input for the pressure side of the sensor, but for the temperature side, I need an input and then a sensor ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my old, you can see it down right there. I'm going to free that up, and then I'm going to use that to wire up the temperature side of the oil sensor. So yeah, just working on some of that stuff, kind of waiting back for some responses on what people think is a good spot to run the coolant pressure sensor. As you can see, I did bulkheads for my Hitmaster valve clutch lines. That way it's clean and sealed, in case there's ever a fire or anything, and that way no smoke or anything gets through the firewall. So I'm waiting to hear back from that. Once I figure that out, I'll know for sure what I'm going to be doing for the clutch pressure sensor, because there's a port on the Hitmaster valve, which I mounted, let's see if you can see it right there, just behind this old climate control vent right there. So there's a port on that solenoid or valve, and I'm thinking I can run the clutch pressure to that, and it'll be super clean. And the nice thing about running it there is it's on the inside of the car, so I can access sensor grounds and 5-volt sources a lot easier, versus trying to find something through that bulkhead connector, which I'm running out of. So once I hear back about that, I'll be able to pull the trigger on where I'm for sure going to put the clutch pressure sensor. So yeah, right now I'm in the weird limbo of waiting on parts, which sucks. Hopefully, you know, I kind of wanted to get a spare diff anyway, so I could have a complete spare transmission ready to go. So hopefully UPS gets back to me and they figure out where it is. If not, then it is what it is. I've got another one in the mail as we speak. So yeah, I'm going to try to do a time lapse or something. I don't have someone else recording for me, and I don't have a good way to set up my phone. So I'll try to do like a time lapse while I'm pinning these connectors and routing the wiring to make some content. So yeah, I'll keep you guys in touch.
There's no denying what we want. There's no denying what we want. Playing games, no. There's no denying what we want. There's no denying what we want. Playing games, no. There's no denying what we want. There's no denying what we want. Playing games, no. There's no denying what we want. There's no denying what we want.
So I got the oil pressure connector pinned. Then I just have to use two of these. I believe it's the green and the white for the oil temp. You'll see in a time lapse, I accidentally pinned in one of the normal 3-pin, I can't remember the name, one of the normal pressure sensor connectors, not really thinking correctly that this is going to go into my harness, which is also that same connector. It's also a male connector, so that wouldn't work out. So I cut it. Luckily I had enough length to save it. Not ideal, but and I just put a Deutsch connector. So I'm probably done messing with this for now. I also got a time lapse of switching the oil pressure sensor to the Deutsch for the female side on the engine harness. And then I was just thinking, and I kind of forgot about I'm wanting to also add crankcase pressure to monitor. And I'm going to probably plumb it into right here where the factory PCV goes. And then I was like, crap, where am I going to put that? Because, like I said, I'm limited through the firewall connector of what I'm running out of inputs, outputs, 5 volt, 12 volt to source off the engine harness. And I'd like to keep the firewall somewhat clean. But then I remembered I had the speed sensor, the factory speed sensor wired in that I'm not using because I have the De La Cruz front and rear. So I've got that zip tied up right under the manifold. So I think I'm going to run that connector right here that's the oil pressure sensor I'm running right now. And I'm going to run it around the side of the engine, side of the head, right through here, and then just connect it under the intake manifold. And that's going to be, I'm going to use the speed sensor for the oil temp. The reason I can't use the speed sensor for the crankcase sensor is because the speed sensor's power is 12 volt. And the power I need for the crankcase sensor is 5 volt. So, but I can use the speed sensor, I can use the ground and the input to have oil temp. So, and then I can use, like I said before, the coolant pressure sensor right down there. I'll be able to use that for the crankcase sensor. So just a little update. I got to figure some stuff out, how I'm going to route this wiring, and get it all buttoned up. All right, another update. I got pretty much everything outside in the engine bay done, wired up, routed. So now I'm just working on wiring in this little pigtail here, and that's going to be my clutch pressure sensor. You can see right there is the Hitmaster valve. That's the first stage valve right there, and then that's the second stage valve. It looks just like a line lock solenoid. I believe it operates the same. So you can see there's a port on the front right here. I'm going to put the pressure sensor there. Got the connector right here. Whoops. So the connector right there. And this is going to be my input wire. So it's going right into the guys, I've got some really good news. I got the new diff in. Everything went together super smooth. Really no issues. I did a time lapse of the assembly, but let's see here. This is all together, ready to go back in the car. Spins freely in every gear. So pretty pumped about that. So next on the agenda for me is fixing the rear wheel speed, which I kind of came to the conclusion that the sensor's bad. So I ordered a new sensor from De La Cruz. You see right there. And pay attention to how this comes. Obviously it's pre-wired and it's a set length of wire. What I did, so this is the old sensor, is I cut, 6 inches there. And I'm going to end up doing the same to the new one and adding a connector. I was kind of figuring out what the best route would be, because the way I have everything routed, it'd be pretty annoying to have to dig back through. It goes up, it follows the trailing arm up above the gas tank and goes through the fuel hat. So it'd be kind of a pain in the ass to trace all that and just replace it. So I decided to add the connector, and I did a 4-pin so I could run the ground shield. So that's what I'm going to be doing to the new sensor. So yeah, probably not going to do a whole lot more tonight. I'm kind of tired, but just wanted to give a quick update. So see you. All right, I got the new speed sensor installed and added that connector so I don't have to worry about tracing everything back. Good news, another good news. So not only did the transmission pan out, the wheel speed is fixed. So the new sensor fixed my problem, so we're all set back here. And I'm kind of proud, man. It looks pretty professional, you know. Man, these little zip tie things, they're adhesive zip tie mounts, are super nice and they're not expensive. Love them. That one there has been on there for at least a year and a half. So they hold up pretty good as long as you prep the surface right. So yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be putting the trans in. So excited for that. guys, we got it running. Just working on bleeding the coolant. The sensors that I added aren't perfect, so I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on. I got the crankcase sensor figured out. I just need to get the oil temp sensor figured out, and then after that we should be good. I had an issue with the wideband at the very end of sick week, the last leg of sick week. Actually, the last drive from the hotel to South Georgia Motorsports Park. Like literally going down the road that South Georgia's on, the O2 sensor started showing an error and wasn't reading. You can see right there. That's exactly what it was doing. So I assumed it was the sensor because they have a life expectancy, and I've had that sensor for a couple years. Replaced the sensor, but that's not it, obviously. So got to figure that out. Got to figure a couple of the other sensors out. But right now the car's running awesome. So temp's still doing good. Still working on bleeding the coolant. So yeah, I kind of wish I had a full exhaust because it doesn't sound too bad with the muffler on it. But we just put fuel in her. This is how you know it was actually low on fuel. Let's see if it'll focus. Yep. It hit my cut. It dropped fuel pressure enough that it put it in safe mode. So I should be able to clear that real quick. Yep, cool. Fuel pressure steady. Before I added the fuel, the flex fuel sensor was all over the place. It was going from like 40% ethanol to back up to 80. Obviously, because the fuel pump was sending it fuel and running out of fuel. Like it was pretty crazy to watch that. But it's good now. Temp's holding steady. No leaks. All right, guys, so I got some stuff figured out from yesterday. So the new sensor didn't fix it, obviously, and some Google search revealed that it's probably gonna have to be sent back. I'm still looking at making a test and tune soon, maybe Friday. There's test and tune at Edgewater, I believe, I think Friday night. So I originally was like, oh crap, I'm not gonna make test and tune because I'm gonna have to order a new wideband and send this one off. But Jegs, I forgot Jegs is a dealer for Fuel Tech. I looked on the website, it says they're in stock. Usually if they don't have them at Jegs, it'll say shipped direct from manufacturer. It says there's 7 in stock, so I should be good. Should be able to grab one and maybe make it to test and tune Friday. So I got the oil temp sensor working. The clutch pressure sensor still iffy on, and kind of the same with crankcase. I'm not using a pan vacuum sensor for the crankcase. I'm just using one of my spare 150 sensors. So maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't care how much vacuum there is right now. I thought I had extra crankcase pressure, so I figured 0 to 150 would tell me that. Maybe not. I'll see. I'll have to make a pass, or at least get it up on a 2-step to see what it's telling me. As for the clutch pressure sensor, I'm not sure why. I'll have to go through and check my work, make sure I didn't mess anything up. But it's just reading 1500 psi. It might also have something to do, I doubt it, if anything, this would make it read nothing. I need to bleed the clutch, because whenever I install the sensor, obviously I open the system. So I think I'm gonna make this a video. I was thinking about tying it in with my first test and tune of the season. This video is probably gonna wind up being long. anyway, so probably just end it here, and then soon, hopefully, there will be some actual racing or test and tune, some track time. Also, my brother, his car's down at Jarvis's place, his Mustang, and Jarvis said he's hoping to start it tomorrow, maybe the next day. And if it starts and everything goes good, it's going to go right on the dyno. So, probably be able to go down and do some filming there. Also, the good news with that is if everything goes well, which it should, then his car will be out testing for the first time in like 3 years. So I'm excited about that. He's super excited about that. My uncle's CUDA, we're looking at putting his 440 that was built by Indy cylinder heads in here soon. And my dad's car is pretty squared away. We just got to do the torsion bars. Right now it's got Hemi torsion bars in it, and that's why we think there's like no front end travel. So we got a set of 6-cylinder torsion bars we're going to put in it, and it should be ready to go to the track. So just a few things and we'll all be set to jet. But we'll see. Obviously that can change. I don't flip of a dime. I could go out and blow my shit up tomorrow. So we'll see. Stay tuned for more, and like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.